Hello everybody, sorry about that. Had the wrong setup configured. I've now got a pussycat who wants to sit on my knee. First time for several days. And of course what he's doing at the moment is blocking your view, and I can't carve with the pussycat there. Come and sit here then, come on, I'll have to carve around you. Come and settle down. You're going to lay down now. This could prove challenging, everybody. I don't actually know how long he's going to stay, but we shall see. He wants attention, so that's going to prove an interesting stream if he keeps on wanting attention. Right, you're going to settle down, Junior, so I can carve. Okay, that's it. Can't keep stroking you all the time though. You've had 2 hours when you could have come and sit on my knee, but you have to choose when I start streaming, don't you, eh? It's all the activity, isn't it? Right, so let's see. No, settle down. This is going to prove interesting, folks, but we shall see how we go. Yes, hello. You could go sit on my wife's knee, you know. She'd love you to sit on her knee. You're not going to though, are you? Ah dear. Welcome anybody who's joined the stream this evening. Sorry, at the moment it's a little bit awkward. I've got a pussycat that wants to sit on my knee, and he wants a little bit of attention before he'll settle down. You Junior. Just in case, you won't be able to see him where he's at the moment, but just in case you want, that's the cat that is currently trying to sit on my knee. Hey, you're going to settle down. Hey, you're going to settle down. Then I can go do some more carving for all these people out on the internet who want to watch. They've already watched you being made into a picture. 3D bloke, good evening. Welcome to the studio. Yeah, you're half here again. I'm half here again at the moment. Junior is wanting to sit on my knee, but he won't settle just at the moment. So this pussycat, he's just off screen. Shall we show you them all to you? Show you to them all, Junior. He's hanging upside down, of course, but there you go. Hello. And until he's had a little bit of attention, he won't sit quiet. He'll keep standing up. So, Bunny Mox Rose, good evening. Not telling the other. Sorry, I left with. Oh, don't worry about it. Just if you disappear, you disappear. It's not a problem. It's not a mandatory thing that you have to say goodbye. Okay. If you're seeing lots of flashes, by the way, don't worry about it. That's just my wife is taking photographs of this pussycat. Right. Have you settled down now, Junior? Kitty, yes. No. You see, now he had the stroke. In fact, you probably just heard him there as he pushed past the mic. But at least now we can get on with some carving. Unless he decides to visit again. Which he may well do. What I need to do tonight is take some more of this background down around the wings, and then we're in a position then I think to take the background down to its final level. And here he comes again. He can't make up his mind. You can't sit there. You'll have to sit on my knee quietly, or go sit behind the monitor or something. The back end of a pussycat. Eh? Yes, it's a dragon. I don't think you quite look like a dog, do you, Junior? Eh? You don't look like a dog. There's an upside down Junior. You've just been compared to a dog. Not quite sure whether you like that, yeah. Yes, I know you were comparing me to Paul O'Grady, which of course only people in the UK would have any idea what that's about. Ah dear. Who often brings a dog onto his television programme. Can't use sharp chisels with you about, Junior? You don't care, do you? You're just going to have a wash. I'll tell you what, if you're going to sit there and have a wash, let's make it a bit easier for the good people who are watching. If I can find the right setting. I'm looking in the wrong place. That's because I want to go to my camera. There we go. We'll make it easier for the people watching. Yeah, you're missing out on. You're missing out on carving, but you're watching a pussycat get a good wash. Washing his paws. Yeah, it is like that, Faye. Definitely like that. You know, streaming this afternoon, he didn't come, but it's just a 2-hour break, and as soon as I sit down, up he pops. And he hasn't been around for a couple of days, so. He's recently found a box downstairs, and that's been his favourite place for about the past 4 or 5 days. If you're ever looking for him, he was in the box. I will when he's had a little bit of a wash, I'll persuade him to sit somewhere else. I may well be taking my arms the life of my arms in my own hands if I do that, because he's just as likely to scratch me if I try, but he's a bit more friendly these days. Well, it depends if you're getting him to do something he doesn't want. Maybe I should change the stream title. Talking Pussycat. You're not going to let them see your face? He's got his back to you, by the way, in case you were wondering. Come on then, are you going to go somewhere else, Junior? Rather than sitting on my carving? You going to go somewhere else? You can't get that close to the camera, they can't see you when you do that. You going to sit on my knee or go sit behind the monitor? Of course I'm talking to this cat, of course, like he may or may not understand me. I have absolutely no idea whether that's the case or not, but you understand that, don't you? You don't want stroking anymore. Okay. You going to sit down? Yeah. You do want stroking. Alright. You're going to come and sit on my knee. Come on. Oh! I did mention something about taking my hands into my own life, and that bang you heard was me just hitting the light. He didn't actually bite me, I just moved too quickly. Oh dear, but that's probably put me in his bad books for a little while. Good job I didn't break the light. Yes, he can be really cute sometimes. There we go, right. I don't know if you guys want that view, by the way, which is sort of upside down, or whether you would prefer it that. No, it looks better that way, doesn't it? But it is upside down, so I'll leave it that way for the moment. If you prefer it upside down, let me know. Which of course will look at it the right way up, but at a funny angle. Yeah, don't worry about the typing errors. Right. Well, just in case he decides to come back, we'll go on with some carving, and then if he does, we'll at least have got something done this evening. He's sat now behind the monitor with his back to me, of course. He's ignoring me. Sometimes he's quite happy to be picked up and just put on my knee or to one side, and other times he just complains like that, and whilst he slings his head round and he'll actually put his teeth on you, he doesn't actually close his mouth as such and bite, but of course you kind of just jump anyway. You're never quite sure whether he'll bite. And it can be quite painful if a cat does bite you, so if nothing else, it provided my wife with great amusement. And I'm sure you guys found it quite funny as well. Okay, I'll leave it that way up. So, sometimes it looks better the other angle, and sometimes it doesn't. So, okay, I can pick Junior up most times. Actually, what he tends not to like is you saw he was sat facing me. For me to pick him up towards me, I've got to kind of do it in a fairly quick manner to pick him up that way and lift him up. If I come from behind him and pick him up, he's a lot more amenable to being picked up. But I think most cats, if they've not been picked up as kittens, they get very wary of being picked up, because it's kind of like they're being restricted, and you know, cats tend not to like that, being restricted in any way, shape or form. Usually all I need to do when he's sat in front of me like that is stroke him a couple of times, and then he'll decide he wants to sit on my knee, and then generally speaking, after a couple of minutes he'll then sit really quietly and just sort of lay down on my knee, and I can get on with other things and just stroke him occasionally, and he's quite happy with that. Which is worse, a cat bite or cat scratch? It's a long time since I've been bitten, so I can't actually remember. I think probably it's you know, it's not quite the same. Cat scratches, of course, are surface scratches, so it's a bit like grazing yourself or something like that, and it's that sort of lasts for a long time, whereas a cat bite is more like just a puncture mark, and you tend not to feel it quite so much. As to which is more painful, I mean, a cat bite can actually go quite deep, so generally speaking, my advice would be to avoid either. Yeah, it's currently falling asleep while almost purring now, so he's sat behind my monitor. He must be feeling quite pleased with himself. Yeah. I think what it is because the cat scratch really, and it sort of it doesn't quite you know, cat scratch doesn't quite give the impression. You've got 5 needle sharp things that dig in, and they're hooked. So generally speaking, a cat doesn't lift his paw out; he drags it back. So they're digging further into your flesh, all 5 of them usually, and he can't really let go as such, because the more he pulls, the more it digs in. You've got to lift a cat out if it's caught in anything. You can't pull it away. If you pull it away, they're just digging further, and he rips whole areas of skin, and it's that ripping which I think hurts. When they bite, they just sort of go in and come out again. They can't rip without breaking the teeth, of course, so they'll bite and release. But yeah, it's ouch. Ooh, yeah, Frey. Yeah, I'm kind of familiar with them doing that. They start and slip, they dig the claws in, and if they're not got a good, especially if the front claws are stuck in on your back, they actually get the front claws in, but they can't get a purchase with the back claws, and of course then they start scrabbling, but the claws are out trying to get a purchase on your back. Well, thank you for for saying I'm talented, Bunny Moxross. I'm not quite sure though. You're following me because you saw the kitty cat. Otherwise you wouldn't have bothered. That's quite alright, I don't mind. Junior, you've got a fan. Maybe what I should do is just broadcast Junior. Actually, I half suspect he'd be quite popular. I'm trying to think now. Who have I seen broadcasting where? On Twitch. Must have been something to do with Minecraft, where one of the streamers had a camera on the cats, which were, I think, sat on a windowsill or something, on a pair of kitties. Oh dear. Maybe I shall have to save up for an extra cat cam, just to sit it down the side here so you can see it. Yeah. Only 23. He or she must have got a good purchase rather quickly. Yeah, I'm just teasing you, Bunny Moxwell, don't worry. Perhaps I could do, yes. I may have to think about that. He's currently half purring, half snoring, just around the side here. Let's see if I can show you where he is. No, it wasn't Thorlight. It was a woman, I think. There he is. You see, he tends to lay just behind there because the backlight, of course, is quite warm. So he's tucked in there usually. I don't know if you can hear him. Of course, now I've turned the microphone round, he's gone quiet. No, he's not going to perform. He was sort of half purring, half snoring almost a minute ago. So maybe that's the next thing to save up for, a cat cam. One of the nice things I guess about Junior is he doesn't hold a grudge either, although he, as you saw, he just, I won't say quite lashed out at me, but you know, had a serious complaint about me attempting to pick him up. As you see, he's still sat on my desk, and probably, I suspect in a little while he'll, especially if he gets sleepy, he'll decide he wants to come back and try and sit on my knee again. So. Yeah, forget the face cam, have a cat cam instead, yeah. I suspect that'd get more people watching than anything else, wouldn't it? I thought he was settling down then, but yeah, we're talking about him. I think the people on stream would really like me to get a camera so that they can see him whenever I'm streaming. Oh, it's okay, Bunny, but enjoy your meal. Yeah, eat your food, don't bother typing. Bubbles the Monkey, good evening, welcome to the studio this evening. Yes, as Bunny Moxrose said, you've missed Junior for this evening. He's probably not going to come back for a while, since I upset him a little bit, but he has stayed on my desk. Aha, we're going to see you. That will be nice. I say that, and of course I've only got one camera, so I can't show you. Well, I can show you my face, but not at the same time as carving. Suppose I could put a mirror or something there, but then it really would look weird. Did you finish the R2D2 Bubbles the Monkey? I'm going to have to make that a stream highlight, aren't I? Him at least, if nothing else, at least him turning around to try and bite me. I can show you him where he is, but I'm not going to attempt to pick him up at the moment. He's tucked down there. And although he probably doesn't look it, he's probably half asleep. He tends to just sit like that with his eyes closed. Half purring, half snoring. And he's not going to turn round, I don't think. He often sits or lies there. He's sort of just in that direction out the door. Is our stairs to go downstairs, so he's half guarding, if you know what I mean. He's sat there watching out for any other cats coming up the stairs. Okay, Bulls, with a bit of luck I might get a chance to see you after the stream tonight. I've already worked out that the stream's more interested in a cat cam than they are in a face cam for me. Yeah, you might want to be a little bit careful with that, Bubbles the Monkey. As the guys on stream can probably tell you, I went to try and pick him up because he was sat here basically, so I couldn't do any carving at all. And shall we say he objected? But I was faster. So I came out of it safe, and then he took a little bit of a huff and went and sat where he is. Funnily enough, earlier on tonight, and when you pick him up from behind him, I had him actually sat right up my front, so his head was over my shoulder, if you like. A bit like, I guess, how you might pick up a baby. And he was quite happy to sit there looking out over my shoulder. But then promptly tries to bite me when I try to pick him up this evening. He was a wild cat, so it's kind of not surprising. You just have to bear that in mind whenever you deal with him, but generally speaking, to say he was a wild cat, he's now got really sort of placid and calm, really. Yeah. Yeah, he's jumped down. He's going off somewhere. He may come back later. Right, let's see if we can do some more around the wings here. By the way, I noticed looking at a recording this afternoon that quite often this camera is wobbling a bit when I'm carving, so sorry about that. I guess it could be a little bit disconcerting. I am waiting for an adapter to arrive in the post, and when it does, it should allow me to mount the camera on a metal snake I have here, which will hopefully be a little bit more stable than the tripod is. Okay, bye. See you later. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever the local time is, Bunny. And I'm certain you've probably told me what your local time is at some point, but yeah, age, memory, both, you know, combine to make me forget lots of things. I'm wondering if I can sit you guys somewhere where you've got a slightly better view of what I'm doing. I'll try that. Of course, what will happen now is I'll get my hands in the way, but we shall see. Now this is where I've got to be careful, because if I push too hard just here, there's only a tiny gap of wood and I'm likely to knock the whole end of that off, which I've just done. So there we go. I think we'll stop that finger a bit shorter than it was, so we'll stop it there. Anybody on the stream who's new to my studio, good evening and welcome. If you're not sure what you're looking at, despite the stream title, what you're looking at is carving, and specifically relief carving. It's a type of carving which how do I describe it? I describe it as 2.5 dimensional, 2.5D carving. 3-dimensional carving would be like a statue or something which is carved on all sides to create a replica of whatever the object is that you're carving. With 2.5D or with relief carving, it's very much like you take that object, cut it in a half, or take a slice of it and stick that slice to a mounting board, and then the object sort of sticks out from that mounting board. Of course, relief carving is actually not actually taking half an object and sticking it on. What we do is we take a full piece of wood and we cut that out of a solid piece of wood and just leave the background behind, which is kind of what you're seeing me doing here now. So I'm cutting away unwanted wood to leave the background, to take the background away, and then what we'll then do, once all that's done and we have a background level established, we'll then actually carve the dragon itself. And again, a lot of this wood that's here will disappear, but for the moment all we do is we just leave it as a solid block outline, and we'll work on it later. As I said, I'm using hand tools here, hand chisels. These are actually made by an American company. They're called Flex Cut. And I believe the name comes from the fact that these are a bit like a sprung steel, but they bend, they flex in other words, which apparently assists in the carving. I say apparently because I don't actually know the physics or science behind that claim. I do know that they work quite well. but I am, relatively speaking, a beginner carver, so it's not something that I have a lot of experience of. You can do carving with power tools as well as more powerful hand tools. So more powerful hand tools, generally speaking, will be larger chisels with a long wooden, generally speaking it's a wooden handle, which you then use a round-headed mallet to hit, and use that to drive the chisel rather than just using pure hand power. Especially if you're doing a lot of other harder woods, that's a really nice thing to be able to do, because hand driving chisels into some woods is really hard work. And I say that from experience of doing it into ash, which we did recently on the stream, and that was really hard work to do, even though these chisels are extremely sharp. Matthias, good evening, welcome to the studio, nice to see you. The wood I'm using here, it's got two names generally. It's, especially in America, it's called basswood, BASS, and whilst it often has that name in Europe as well, it gets called lime or European lime wood. It's a very nice wood to carve. It's got it's a relatively soft wood, but it takes a cut or an edge really nicely. You don't get a soft edge. You can cut a right angle on it. I won't say you can cut yourself on them, but it sort of feels a really sharp right angle, which is quite nice. There isn't a lot of difference across the grain of the wood between what is effectively the rings of the wood. On a lot of woods, the ring and what's between it the rings are harder than what's between it. On basswood, they're roughly about the same density, strength, hardness, however you want to describe it, which means that as you're carving it, you don't get like dips and ridges, which you would get often from carving other woods. And also it's relatively close grained as well, so it's a really consistent sort of texture across the surface. I was mentioning power tools, and you've got the mallet driven hand tools, but what you can actually also get is power tools for carving. They come in really what is essentially two types. There's rotary based power tools, and then there is hammer based carving tools. So hammer based carving tools, really what you've got is essentially almost an electric hammer or an electric mallet. Generally speaking, your carving blade and they usually are replaceable blades, will go into the end of the carving tool like it goes into the end of here, and then the handset has got, effectively, generally speaking, it's a rotary to reciprocating converter. So what it does is it basically hammers the blade. So you can, it drives the blade along. They work really nicely, so I understand, or certainly having seen them. And of course that means you're using a lot less effort, especially when you're carving wood which is more dense or harder. And of course, I was going to say, depending on the manufacturer of the tool, most of the electric reciprocating based chisels are electric, so they're either an electric standalone tool Companies like Proxmox make them, for example. Or what they are is they're a rotary to reciprocating conversion. So you get people like Fordham who make rotary carving equipment, and they have a special handset which does the conversion. In both cases, the tools, the drive unit is generally variable speed, so you don't actually have to go at maximum speed or anything like that. You can turn it down and just use quite gentle movements. And in fact, the reciprocating handset is quite often used for jewellery making, because when you're setting stones are generally set in like a claw, or I think it's well, basically the metal folds over the top of the gem to hold it in place in like a cup, and you can get like little tiny punches, for want of a better description, which fit in the rotary tool or the reciprocating tool, which is then used to drive the metal and bend it over the actual gem or stone that you're setting, so that you've got a lot of control with them. And of course with rotary carving you can stay completely rotary, so you can use anything from great big cutting wheels down to little tiny, literally dentist drills, and therefore you've got a whole range of capabilities for carving, even down into extremely intricate details. As I say, you can use dentist drills, and in fact one of the rotary tools that I actually have is a dentist drill, or more precisely it's a dental technician's drill, but it's still used by dentists, and that's what it was actually made for. Fortunately at the moment you won't see me using that on stream, mainly because I want to use that with an extractor fan which is behind me, and I can't actually get the camera set up over there in a way which is useful for me, because the rotary tools, especially the dental drill, is extremely good at turning wood into flying very fine wood dust. I wouldn't even almost call it sawdust. It literally is almost like dust at times. And without the extractor fan, not only does it get everywhere, you actually, you'd be, or I would be, breathing the dust in, and that's not a really good thing. You're not getting keep getting my hands in the way, don't I, with this? If it's not a really good picture, let me know. I can always put the camera back where it was to give you more of an overview. But I'm kind of carving behind this area, and I know when the camera's over there you basically just couldn't see what I was doing. You see me doing just in this bit here is creating a stop cut. I'm creating a vertical cut downwards, so that when I try and shave wood crosswise like this, I'm basically stopped by the downward cut. It stops the wood from splitting. Okay, this is almost down to the level, at least I want it at for the moment, which means I can go on and do this other bit around here. Again, if you've not seen this before, you can see me raising these curls of wood. I'm not trying to pull them off or break them off, especially not with the chisel, because that would tend to destroy the sharp edge of it by trying to lever them off. But there is always a chance when if you try and pull off a shaving that's still attached, that you will actually cause rips into the actual wood that you want. Less likely with this amount of depth of wood here, but if I did it, say, up at this point here, I could tear a whole piece right across, which of course wouldn't necessarily be a problem depending on at what stage of the carving was. If it was nearly finished and I did that, then of course it would potentially ruin the whole piece. So it's kind of a habit to get into, is not pulling bits of wood off. Down here it might not matter, up here it possibly would, but if you get into the habit of not doing it, always cut the wood off so it's free of the piece. Then that way, you've sort of, I would say, developed like a muscle memory, if you like, but you've developed the habit that says you don't try, you always make sure that the wood has been cut free first, and then you don't have the possibility of accidentally ripping off something you want it to keep. So it wasn't quite free, so I just cut further down on the stop cut, and it drops free like that. I think this chisel is getting a little bit unsharp. So there is a story behind the dragon that I'm carving here, and it's so this piece is kind of in the fan art category. In that the idea of it is borrowed from, and the basic outline is borrowed from the reference picture you see at the bottom left. That reference picture, it's part of a picture that was painted by an artist and illustrator called Michael Wheland. Michael illustrated quite a few. Dead Bread TV, welcome to the studio. Thank you very much for following, I appreciate that. What was I saying? Yes, Michael Wheland did illustrated the front covers of quite a few books by an author called Anne McCaffrey. And Anne McCaffrey wrote a number of, well, they are science fiction books, but they're effectively also a crossover with sort of a folklore type thing as well. But she wrote a number of books about a world called Pern, and to which humans went a long time ago in a spaceship and basically forgot where they came from. But the world itself has a menace, and the dragons were the dragons assisted the humans in actually overcoming the menace, and they lived with their riders, and there's the whole raft of stories associated with that. When Anne McCaffrey wrote the books with the dragons, she had in mind how she wanted the dragons to look. Now, most people, when they draw dragons, they're sort of scaly, lizard-like, fire-breathing, spiky sort of things. Anne McCaffrey wanted something that looked sort of fairly formidable, but also benign, shall we say. And she had certain thoughts about what her dragons should look like. And apparently Michael Wheland understood, if you like, or from reading the stories understood what they were supposed to look like. And the design or the pictures he came up with were just exactly what Anne McCaffrey had in mind. And so he actually became her favourite illustrator for her books. Now, this particular dragon is a dragon called Ruth, and he is a white dragon, the only one in the whole story arc of all the books. Is a unique dragon. And this the dragon that's illustrated there in the image is white. Of course, it's Ruth. It's the only one it could be. All the other dragons have other colours like green, green, brown, gold, blue. I think that's it. There's 4 colours. But Ruth is the only white one. Now, ever since I started art again, which started with when I actually started art again, having not done anything art related for lots and lots of years. When I got an airbrush, one of the first images I tried to airbrush was a dragon, one of these dragons. Wasn't very successful back then, but having only picked up an airbrush after a couple of hours, kind of wasn't surprising. But so I just thought I'd have another go at a dragon, this time in carving. So if you've not seen any of my stream before, whilst I'm doing carving here, I do some other things as well. Pyrography, which is creating images on wood using heat. Also do scraper board. Now, scraper board is a 3-layer sandwich of a thin card backing. I want to say porcelain clay, but I'm not sure whether I actually mean porcelain clay, but certainly a white clay, which is then rolled and squeezed on top of that backing card, and then finally it's coated with a layer of black ink, generally speaking Indian ink, and you then use sharp tools to scrape through that surface ink to expose the white clay underneath, and how much of that you expose and quite what patterns and shapes you use in exposing it just determine what the picture looks like that you create. And also I occasionally do on stream, like I was doing this afternoon, is an art or a craft which is called punch craft, which really is sort of uses a needle to push loops of thread through material, very much like rug making used to be done, and that then creates an image on the face side made up of lots and lots of loops of thread, and hey presto, you then end up with your picture. Also do a lot of other things as well which I'm not currently streaming. I mentioned the rotary carving. I also do glass engraving using the same high-speed rotary tools, and again for the same reasons I need to I can't do that on stream at the moment because it needs at least the extractor running, and if I don't run the extractor I then have to wear a particle mask so that I don't breathe glass dust in, and if I wear a particle mask you guys won't be able to hear me. Or at the very least I'll sound extremely funny and muffled and indistinguished. I also do things like cross stitch. I do rug making, so either latch hook rug making or a form of punch type rug making. What else do I do? Whatever I happen to feel like, to be honest. I enjoy all sorts of crafts and that result in pictures of any kind. So I've got, for example, which I've never yet tried, I've got some, they're not perler beads but a similar sort of idea, plastic beads, which once formed into a picture can then be heated to fuse them together, or just stuck together using sticky back, I was about to say sticky back plastic, but like a sticky back adhesive sheet. I also make models, and even on stream just recently we made a quadcopter which didn't really live up to expectations, but we shall give that another chance. Oh yes, and of course the other thing that I do, again I haven't done it on stream yet, is I do airbrush work as well. Now if you actually talking about there's a couple of things that I do, and the airbrushing reminded me, if you're interested in seeing art made from the plastic beads, then check out Bubbles the Monkey, who may still be around on stream, and I believe she will be streaming later this evening, in about an hour or so, or perhaps even earlier. If she's around, perhaps she'd mention it. In fact, there you go, she's just come on stream. Bubbles, before you go, you might like to tell people when you're going to start streaming. Nayagi, thank you very much for joining the studio. It's nice to have you as a follower. Thank you very much. It is timing, isn't it? If you want to tell them when you start streaming, because Bubbles does, as I say, does art using the beads, the plastic beads, some amazing pieces, and I believe you'll be streaming later this evening. Oh, I say evening. It's evening for me here in the UK. And also around somewhere is 3D Bloke. I know he's lurking while he gets on with other things. He doesn't stream weekends. Generally speaking, Monday to Friday. And that's 3D Bloke. But he's an airbrush artist and also does hairy stick stuff as well. And if you're not sure what a hairy stick is, it's kind of a joke that airbrush artists use, and I think we came up with a name for airbrush artists, which I'll mention in a second. But hairy stick stuff is normal paintbrushes, what you think is of a paintbrush, stick of wood with some hairy stuff on the end. So hairy stick work, Free also does as well. And he's quite an amazing artist, especially some of the monochrome stuff he's working on at the moment, like a xenomorph. I recommend you give him a check, but as I say, unfortunately he generally only broadcasts Monday to Friday, so he won't be, whilst he's around, he won't be streaming this evening unless he changes his mind, which of course he's perfectly entitled to do. But normally speaking, he broadcasts at 10 o'clock UK time. That's in about 3/4 of an hour, but only during the week. So as I generally during the week finish at about 10 o'clock, 3D Bloke takes over, so it's a nice compliment to hand over to 3D, where I can then watch him do some of my favourite artwork as well, because I love airbrushing in monochrome. So Nayagi, welcome to the studio. Sorry, I got a bit into the spiel there. Nice to see you. Thank you for following. That's most kind of you. And do you get involved in any form of artwork or stream for yourself? Or are you just interested in watching what goes on in creative? Because it's a fascinating area to check out. Okay, now that was a split of wood. That's something you have to be careful of, not to split wood. And if you split wood, it means you've lost control of the tool, and it tends to shoot out a little bit. But again, you're tearing the wood, so because you're tearing the wood, you don't actually know where it's going to go. So always be careful to avoid tearing the wood and ripping it. And that's generally associated with trying to work in the wrong direction, because the wood has a grain. You have to work in conjunction with that grain if you don't want the wood to split and tear. Well, I suspect Bubbles the monkey disappeared before she heard me mention or ask her what time she started streaming. I've got a feeling it's in about half an hour's time, or about quarter of an hour's time, about 9:30 in the UK. So feel free to check her out. I certainly would recommend it. There's a huge variety of different things, as you might have caught on, as I mentioned it. She's currently doing an R2-D2 two-dimensional image in little tiny 2.5mm diameter beads. Little tiny things there. one that if you're like me at all, you definitely need the glasses for. Okay, I've got a fair bit down there. So what I'm going to do now is I've got another piece around this side, so I'm going to just move the clamps around, and then once we've got through this particular section of wood, we're then going to be in a position to take the background down to its final depth. I've got a few pieces at areas like around here and around here that I'm probably going to leave for a while to support these finger joints, because otherwise the edges will become really well, I won't say brittle, but they will break off really easily. So I'm leaving plenty of wood there just to support them, and I'll do the final carve down of this and this area somewhat later on in the process. Now then, I'm just trying to think of the best position to put this in to do this. Probably something like that. Once we actually start final carving this piece, it's going to become interesting to clamp, because I'll be clamping to the background but hoping that I don't actually put a clamp impression into it. I'm going to have to see about investing in some plastic clamps, I think, rather than this metal G-clamp that I'm currently using. Right, I need a bit more space, so you will have to go back a little bit. So I'm just creating vertical stop cuts. As I say, the stop cut stops the wood tearing, stops the chisel driving into wood that you don't actually want it to go into, which is why it's called a stop cut, because it stops things. Sorry, I'll try and keep my hands out of the way, but it is a little awkward. Now there, if I'm not careful, I'll actually end up pushing the wood and actually pushing it off and literally breaking it. So what I probably need to do is come at it from this angle here. And if you're at all familiar with the sayings about don't cut towards you, then you're perfectly right, but that's a guideline, not necessarily a rule. What I was doing in doing the cutting towards me there was perfectly safe. It's couched as a rule because for beginners it basically has to be a rule. It makes it easier for beginners in lots of art forms that use big knives and sharp tools. Just to say, never cut towards yourself, because that way they avoid it basically, and they avoid the risks and the dangers that come from doing it if you don't actually understand what you're doing. I'm going to have to move you even further back, I'm afraid. Just because I need to get the chiseling. As I say, it's couched as a rule for beginners for safety purposes. But what I'm doing here, and that is because, for example, a lot of beginners will get hold of the knife, like if they're going to use a chisel like that, they'll get hold of it like that, and you'll notice my arms are off the desk and they'll be pulling it towards themselves. And as you can see, if I lose control of this, it's quite easy to get it as far as almost stabbing myself. In actual fact I won't, because I've got my elbows against me, so I have a limit, but they'll use the whole force of their arms to pull the chisel, and that's when it does become dangerous. I'm doing two things that stop that, or possibly three. I've got my arms on the desk, so I can't really pull because they're not sliding on the desk, and you know, the piece is getting in the way and all sorts of things. The other thing is I'm holding the chisel with one hand, not two, and I'm driving the chisel using my fingers here. So I'm not, at the most I'm using my wrist to assist, my left wrist in this particular case. So my right hand is holding the chisel firm and my left hand is driving it, and it is literally just the finger force with a little bit of assistance from my wrist, but I'm not using the whole of my arms muscles. In fact, I'm not using my arm muscles at all to do this. That way, you know, the limit of what I can drive this, if in there I wasn't holding it properly, the limit of what I can drive this is my fingers. That's about the maximum distance I can go, and it's quite hard to drive once your fingers are past sort of the 90-degree mark. So it really means I'm not putting a lot of force on this, and it's not going to go scooting off, and you'll notice my wrists are well out of the way. So once you understand your tools and you understand, you know, the techniques and where the risks actually are, then you can do things that normally you know, as a beginner you're taught don't. Never cut towards yourself, for example, is one of those rules. Just Jessup, different camera angle. Are you suggesting I use one, or that it is a different camera angle? And Tillybug, good evening, both of you. Welcome to the studio this evening. Nice to see you again. It is a different camera angle, if that's what you were meaning, Just Jessup, because where you normally sit over here, looking this way, I was working back here, and basically all you saw was, you know, it was like you were looking over there. If I was working in this now, you can't actually see what I'm doing. So I move the camera around to the side here. Yeah, it is a different camera angle, just to give you, you know, in an effort to give you a better view of what I'm actually doing. Otherwise, I say I'm sort of working out of sight like this. You know, you know where I'm working, but you don't know what I'm actually doing. Whereas now, if I'm working here, for example, you can actually see the chisel cut. Although it's really hard to keep my hands out of the way sometimes. That's keeping my hands out of the way of the camera, by the way, not the chisel. It's easy to keep my hands out of the way of the chisel. Now then, I'm ripping wood. You might have even heard that, and that is because of the way the grain is, or the grain of the wood. It's starting to dip down there, and the way in which I'm driving this is causing it to split along that grain plane. And what that's telling me is I'm really cutting in the wrong direction. I should be cutting in this direction. That way I'm cutting into the grain, and if anything, the grain is trying to push the chisel out of the wood, which means I actually cut across the grain rather than along it. And when I cut across, I get a clean cut. When I cut along the grain, that's when it's prone to splitting out. Now, all these all these bits of shavings are getting stuck to my arms and are going all over the place. So I'm going to have a lot of tidying up to do tonight. In fact, I'm going to turn this chisel the right way up, which is that way, which will make it a little bit easier for me just to hold it correctly. So, just Jessup and Tillybug, you missed the excitement earlier on this evening, where I nearly got raked by a pussycat, or bitten by a pussycat even, since that's what he tried to do. We had a visit from Junior, who decided he wanted to sit right there, and so the stream got treated to about a 5-minute presentation from Junior on how to get washed. And when I tried to persuade him he would actually like to go somewhere else, he objected and then went somewhere else. And I almost smashed my my light in because I was faster than the pussycat in getting my hand out of the way. Split wood there, you see. I don't know if you heard the crack. Could almost do with something like a little tiny, I don't know, either hand or possibly head mounted camera for this, but I don't like wearing headsets, so. I believe the stream possibly liked the idea of having a cat cam better than a face cam. Okay, well, bear in mind I am a beginner. What I say is my experience. I am sure there are a lot more ways of doing it. In fact, I'm almost certain there's a lot more ways of doing it. So, whilst I hope I'm telling you why I'm doing what I'm doing the way I'm doing it, it's not necessarily the right way. I do try and make it a safe way. I certainly don't want to show you guys an unsafe practice, and I don't particularly want to do anything unsafe for myself. So, but bear in mind that you know, there may be other ways of doing it, there may be other better ways of doing it. Yes, there is a VOD being recorded, so it will be available, and I suspect since it caused quite a bit of amusement, I think it probably will end up highlighting the moment that, or at least the 5 minutes while Junior came and interrupted the stream, and then the bit where I tried really quickly to smash the light that's above my head. And as you can see there, the chisel came out of the wood, and it went that's as far as it went before it stopped, because I couldn't drive the chisel anymore. Yep. Oh, you started to watch the VOD back, have you, just Jessup? And the one thing that grain often makes it difficult to do is actually to get a flat surface. You tend to follow the grain somewhat, and that's something to sort of just be avoided, or at least be aware that you're doing it so that you can actually straighten it out and flatten your background, because generally speaking in doing relief carving like this you want a background which is flat. Having said which, of course, there's no reason why it has to be. It's not anything mandatory. It's just sort of a convention. Sort of, well, shall we say it's usually that the backgrounds are flat, but they don't have to be. I mean, I could quite easily, I guess, carve into the background of this some of the background scenery. If you can sort of just see on the reference picture, for example, in the distance, there's another mountain spire with a dragon on it. There's odd other spires around above the cloud layer there. There's a moon. So I guess I could always sort of carve some of that into the background as what would be called extremely low relief. So it may only be a millimetre or two deep relief carving in the background. And although I said the background often is flat, it doesn't mean it can't carry a texture, for example. So it doesn't have to be smooth like this. It could be textured like this is currently textured. That's an accidental texture in some ways, because that's just from the tool that I was using, but there is essentially no reason why you couldn't leave a background like that or create any other texture that you want. The Brilliant Bacon, hello, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the studio. Nice to see you. Thank you for dropping in. What do I do with all these shavings? I file them in a round portfolio. Other than otherwise known as a bin. No, they just get thrown away. I guess if somebody, if you're doing this and you had a hamster or something, that come in quite useful for bedding, or just for the cage floor, but no, I just dispose of these. I don't create enough to recycle them in any way. I suppose if you had a compost heap, you could put them onto a compost heap. They are, after all, just standard organic wood. There's nothing unusual about them in that way. Yeah, cat carving. Yeah, in a way, I suppose. I think actually we're kind of half laughing about that on the stream. I mean, after all, I think there's a few of us had experiences of cats carving in our arms. But what I'm making is the Brilliant Bacon is something called a relief carving. It's of a dragon, so the image is actually of a dragon. A dragon as envisaged by an author called McCaffrey in her books. But it's relief carving, so it's well, all carving is generally from a solid piece of wood. It's not a statue carving, so it won't stand alone. A three-dimensional carving, of course, you can pick up, turn around. It's carved on all sides. With a relief carving, it's only carved on the front. So it's a bit like taking a 3D object, cutting it in half, and then sticking it to a backing plate. Now, we're not sticking anything here. We're actually carving it and the backing plate out of a single piece of wood. But that's what relief carving is. That's got to go down a fair bit. Oh dear, sorry, your use of cool there amused me, because for a couple of reasons. One is it's quite warm in the studio this evening. So it's not exactly cool. And the second one is it always strikes me as being funny, because one of the other crafts that I do is pyrography, which is using heated tools on wood to create images, and a few people have sort of said, you know, you're doing pyrography, cool, and my standard response is, no, actually it's quite hot really. It was funny the first time. It gets less funny the number of times I repeat it, but I know what you were referring to. Okay, at this stage here I could actually switch to using a V-shaped tool to carve down the side of here, and I might just try it. Sometimes it works well and other times it's not so good. The Brilliant Bacon, thank you very much for following the studio. That's most kind of you. I'm glad you're enjoying what you're seeing. Relief carving isn't the only thing we do on stream. It's what we're doing at the moment, but we do also do a we. That's the royal we. Basically me. I also do, as I mentioned, pyrography there, and scraper board, and something called punchcraft. But generally speaking, I'm not. I generally do punchcraft in ad hoc streams on a weekend. They're not in the main evening streams at the moment. Although I guess you guys who are watching, and who've seen me do that, if you are actually interested in me inserting it into the normal nightly streams, let me know. I don't mind adding it in. Using a V-shaped tool here. It's called a V-shaped tool because quite literally, if you look at the end, if I can get an angle where you can see it, it's, hopefully you can see it there, it is actually shaped like a V. It's not a right angle, it's actually more, it's an acute angle, it's more or less than a right angle. But in doing, if I hold one side against this face here, so it's flat, then what I'm doing is I carve into the wood. I maintain that straight flat edge here, and I cut into the wood that's on the bottom. So it's a good way of cutting in and keeping a right angle. Well, sorry, it's not exactly a right angle, but it's keeping that sharp angle there and keeping this surface vertical. But you can only cut so far in, so it's kind of good for cleaning up things, cleaning up the corner, and doing a little bit of cutting. But once you get down past the surface, it then gets a lot harder to do it. So sometimes it works better than others. So I'm going to change back to my flat. Thank you, Just Jessup. Yes, I enjoy doing pyrography, just as I guess the Brilliant Bacon hasn't seen them. It's a couple of pieces that we've done on stream. This is of a cat called Felix, and now that of course you're looking at it upside down, so I'll turn them this way up. So that's of a cat called Felix, and this one is of the cat that tried to explain to me this evening that he actually didn't want to get picked up in the way I was trying. This is Junior. So these are both pyrographic pieces, and I've got some others as well. First carved tree. I think there's a couple of other people that do, or may do. There's I call him CJ something 13, who has or does carve, but I've never actually yet seen him do any carving on stream. But I am aware that he does carve, and I think there's at least one other person that also does carving and pyrography. But again, I've never actually seen them do either yet on stream. what I'm working to here is I've got a line scrolled down the side here, which is about, gives me about a 5mm thick background once I get down to it. So that's what I'm carving down to that line basically. Okay, this blade is feeling a little bit a little bit dull, so I'm going to sharpen it up. Just Jessup, I see. Thank you very much, Brilliant Bacon, for that assessment. I don't mind. Thank you. You're watching one of the VODs back, I guess, Just Jessup, eh? As well as live. Ah dear. Yeah, that must be driving you potty, hearing at least two of me. The Brilliant Bacon. This one isn't pine. This wood is actually it goes by two names really. Generally speaking, in America and in sometimes in Europe, it gets called basswood, BASS. Its European name is well, European lime wood. But increasingly, I generally see it listed in Europe as basswood. I think that's probably because a lot of people now are seeing things like YouTube videos where there's a lot of American carvers and they're describing it as basswood and going looking for it, and so obviously the shops that do sell wood are advertising it by the name that people are asking for. It's not pine though. Pine isn't really a fantastically good wood for carving. You can carve pine, and I have done so, but it has some characteristics, shall we say, that mean it's not necessarily as good as this basswood is. So for example, yeah, he did. I got out the wood though way quickly, didn't I? I'll explain the characteristics in a minute, because I've just seen you said balsa wood, Brilliant Bacon. No, daft as it sounds, did you know balsa wood is a hardwood? And yet mahogany, I think it's mahogany, is a softwood. Which really confuses a lot of people, because balsa is really soft. Actually, balsa isn't a great wood for doing this with. It comes down to the characteristics, and pine is similar. So what the characteristics that basswood have or has, which make it a really nice wood for carving, is it's relatively soft to carve, to cut with a blade, but it holds the cut really nicely. So, for example, I've just cut a real sharp angle, a 90-degree angle, and it is, it's nice and clean, a 90-degree angle. You can see it here as well. It's got a nice, clean, straight edge, and whilst it's not sharp enough to cut myself, it still feels relatively sharp. If you try doing the same thing with balsa wood, you get a soft edge. You have to use extremely sharp tools to get a sharp corner transition on balsa wood, and the bottom here as well. It's such an easy wood to tear, is balsa wood. It takes quite a lot of practice to be able to carve on it with any decent result. pine. So one of the other characteristics of basswood is all wood has rings. You can see them here, light and dark areas. The difference in hardness between the light and dark areas here is very minimal. You almost can't feel the difference, and they're very close together. And how do I describe it? They well, it's to do with the hardness, but let's say that the hardness between the rings and the stuff between it is almost the same. Pine, the rings are, and it's relatively speaking, the rings are hard and the stuff between it is soft, and the rings are actually quite a long way apart. These aren't, they're quite close together. And what happens when you carve pine is you get ridges and dips, where the ridge is where the ring is, and then the dip is the softer bit in between. It takes quite a lot of skill to actually carve it and not get that sort of hilly effect. And if you even try and sand it, you've got to be really careful. You've got to use a sanding block basically, otherwise if you try and sand it, you sand the soft stuff and not the hard stuff, and it just makes it worse. This wood, I've never noticed that effect coming in. It's such a nice wood to carve. And now I shall catch up on okay. Balsa wood is definitely a hardwood, and now you've got me thinking whether mahogany is actually. I'm fairly sure it's a softwood. It's to do with whether the tree is deciduous or not. Is that whether wood is described as a whether a tree is described as a hardwood or softwood is principally to do with with whether it's deciduous or not. And so pine is a softwood, if I remember correctly, and balsa wood is a hardwood. So it's and it's just one of those funny things, because balsa, if you're talking about how hard it is to cut, balsa is extremely soft. So just more or less like a play on words, really. 80 Fall Guy, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. And I keep mentioning we've got all these very interesting streamers that are around on Creative, and I mentioned a couple earlier, and of course now what we've got is 80 Fall Guy. I could describe him as a famous Twitch broadcaster. So, I certainly think he's famous. AD is well worth checking out. AD, his craft is chainmail. That's making things out of little tiny rings, or not so tiny rings, but generally speaking, whilst most people probably think of armour when you talk about chainmail, whilst it's built using similar techniques, what AD makes is jewellery and similar articles, and things like dice bags, for example, for tabletop games and that sort of thing, or anything else you want to put in it. I guess, bearing in mind it's made out of tiny rings, so there is a limit to how small things you can put in them, I guess. And I believe you were making some jewellery with captured stones in it. Was it this evening you mentioned, AD? I can't actually remember, to be honest. There you go then, Just Jessup, but I got it the wrong way. Got mahogany wrong, but just one of those funny things. So yes, definitely worth checking Eddie Folger out. I believe you only broadcast normally twice a week, I think, isn't it, Eddie? Wednesday and Saturday. But guys, I highly recommend you follow him at least to be notified when he goes live, and check out the chainmail stuff. It's very cool. Different coloured rings as well, so you get different. You can build patterns and all sorts of things into the chainmail. Now I could use a gouge at this point here to literally gouge out wood, but given that I can only use it on this small part because I can't use it right up against the edge here, I'm just using the square chisel. I'll use the gouge again on some other areas where there's a lot more material to be gouged out. As I get closer down to the line than I want to go down to, I have to be a little bit careful about how deep I cut into the wood. I don't want to go exactly down to the line. What I want to do is leave, well, I'll stop just above it, because what I'm then going to do is get out some bigger chisels and flatten the surface off, and I need a little bit of spare room, if you like, above where I want to get to, in case I have to cut a little bit further down, or just, you know, some bits just happen to be a little bit lower than others, so I need to give myself a little bit of spare room. And you might not have realised it, but since sharpening this blade, it's a heck of a lot sharper. Sharpening was more of a polishing, really, polishing the edge. It just recovers the sharpness rather than actually sharpening it as such, as most people may think of sharpening using a sharpening stone or something like that. I've never yet sharpened the tools in that way, or never needed to. That's it, bag charms, captured beads. So yeah, I recall you saying you were capturing something. Oh, okay, so Wednesdays is the chainmail. I've never caught any of your gaming streams yet, so I can't attest to those. But the chainmail stuff is an amazing stream to watch. I know it's skill, AD, but I still can't work out how you remember which way to put all those rings, and where, you know, which ring you have to feed through which ring in which direction to get the whole thing to lie flat. I don't know, it's practice, and it's probably obvious and second nature to you now, but an amazing thing, folks. Check him out. I'll stop embarrassing you now, AD. Right, that's probably close enough for that area there. And because the grain goes downwards here, it's trying to twist my chisel that way as I'm cutting across. Which essentially, either I have to be really strong at holding the chisel to stop it twist, or the other thing it's doing effectively is saying, hey, you're cutting in the wrong direction. because if I cut in the right direction, then I don't get any of that twisting. And the chisel lies flat. Sorry, I keep forgetting you. My hand's in the way sometimes when I'm doing this. I apologise. So that's good enough for the moment around there. When I get the, basically I've got a big flat chisel like this, which means that I can cut away, smooth out and cut away a lot of the ridges a lot easier when I get that out. But I only want to do that when I've got very little material to get rid of, because it's surprisingly it's harder to control a larger chisel than it is a smaller one, because you've got a bigger surface area that's you've got to push against. Okay, catch up on stream. Oh, come on, Tiddybug, you've seen me. You've seen me. I'm quite happy to show you. It's just that cameras cost a lot of money, you know. And I've just bought a decent microphone, which I borrowed money from my savings, if you like, to do it. So I've got to save up for that, and it'll be a while before I can afford a camera. So you know, unfortunately, the face cam will take a while. I don't have any particular objections to it. It's not a NASA. I'm not a NASA robot 3D. It's who would it be? It's Honda, isn't it, with the robots, rather than NASA. Yeah. Well, if you guys want to buy me another, you know, one of these Logitech 920s, you can have a face cam. I don't mind. But there you go. Hello. My hair wants combing today, but I'll quite happily sit that down there. But now, of course, you can't see me carving. So, which would you rather? Watch me? And that's probably a better view of me rather than staring up my nose. Or watch me carving. And I kind of think you probably prefer the carving than looking at that for most of a stream. But, yeah, you're watching. If you want to watch the face. Asimo, that's, yeah, they've developed one that's got got a human face on it there. I don't know if it was Honda or one of the other Japanese companies, but yeah, you definitely need a zoomed out view. Don't want a close-in view. It's Up Stripper. Good evening. Welcome to the studio. I haven't seen you around for a while. How are you doing? Which camera is it? It's a Logitech 920. Which of course is a full HD cam. I know you're not getting a full HD. You're getting the 720p, but rather than the 1080. But it is a full HD cam. and I am down converting to the 720 just to keep the stream bandwidth down. It's one of the 920 was, or the 930, which I think is a slight, well, generally aimed at business because it's a wider field of view for conference calls and things like that. But the camera is generally seems to be really highly regarded as a good camera for both for streaming purposes and just as a general purpose webcam. And certainly I've been pleased with it so far, apart from a couple of nights ago when it did something really weird. It seemed to lose its vertical framing, going back to the old days of TV when it wasn't digital and you get the frame roll. It kind of did that, but only on half the frame. Okay, no, I don't mind that. I wasn't, yeah. I don't look to see who was actually in the stream, ASAP Stripper. So I don't actually know who comes in and lurks, which is quite alright. I don't mind that at all. I do that myself in a lot of streams. Usually because I'm watching 4 or 5 at the same time, I just can't concentrate on the audio of so many. But I watch a lot of stuff like while I'm eating my lunch or my tea or something like that, and I don't want to talk, so I just lurk. And I know most people, or shall I say, most people who have expressed an opinion that I've heard don't like being called out when they join the stream if they just want to lurk. I certainly don't. I actually, most of the time if somebody does that, I'll leave the stream, but just occasionally I'll just, if I'm really interested in the stream, I'll just sit there and not say a word. But I thank you for popping back and checking me out. That's kind of you. That's stuck somewhere, so don't tear, cut. There it is. Making quite good progress now on this, getting this background cut down. It'll probably still take at least another stream to get it down to the to a smooth finish and ready for the main carving, but there's various different ways of doing things, so it is possible, for example, to do this in all one go, carve this and carve the background at the same time, especially when you've got a lot of experience about doing it. I don't. I'm a beginner carver. Doing it this way makes it easier for me, and so that's the way I'm doing it at the moment. In some ways that style actually mimics the way in which 3D carving is done, because generally with 3D carving you cut the blank, so you take your square block of wood and you cut out all the bits to create the shape that you're after, and then you carve from that blank. And this is kind of like doing the same thing but on a 2.5 dimensional scale rather than a 3-dimensional scale. Yeah, I guess the mods are a different thing, aren't they, because they're kind of part of the channel rather than, you know, just a visitor to the channel. And yes, I noticed you've mentioned afterwards to me a couple of times when I've said I've been in your stream, you've gone, yeah, I saw you. Now again, that's trying to cut the grains going down, which I keep forgetting about on this side, so I've got to cut in this direction to avoid being dragged down into the wood. And by the way, talking about sharp tools mean that surface there is really smooth. Yeah, just Jessup, I think you mentioned it earlier on as well. Have you been flying today? Yeah. Oh, I understood that's how, well, I'm going to say that's how people who are know when it happens, because I've got the IRC channel. Sometimes I kind of feel like not announcing people but knowing when there's somebody there, because of course Twitch chat itself, or Twitch itself, is very slow to tell you when there's anybody actually in the channel or not. And whilst I'm quite happy to talk to myself, and frequently do, whilst I'm doing things, it's always nice to know that somebody's listening to what you're actually saying, even if they choose not to say hello, which is fine. Right. Let's get a gouge out to do some of this. We'll use the big one. Yeah, you mentioned that 3D. I keep meaning I'll have to have a look. Just if you want to practice landing on things, just dress up. I'd suggest try doing something like rather than books, I was going to say a piece of paper, but you kind of need something that's fairly weighty so it sits down, but it's thin. So I mean, there's an example like a sheet of hardboard here that's not going to blow away, and put that on the floor and try and land on that to start with. The reason being that if you're trying to land on something that's off the floor, okay, as you know, so you've got something like, you know, here, and you're flying along here, so the helicopter sat effectively on a column of air, for want of a better description. It doesn't quite work like that, but kind of think of it as being on a column of air. As soon as you get the rotor blades over the edge of this thing here, the column of air that it wants to sit on is now not at this height but up here, and so what happens is it does that and starts to back off, and the effect gets worse as you get over it, because it then starts to want to rise and twist in all sorts of directions, especially if you come on over an edge. So it gets really hard to control, and you end up tending to overcorrect and either shoot off at the end or slam into whatever it is you're trying to land on. If you try and land on something that's flat on, a thin piece of wood, you develop your skills of positioning, to land, because of course with only a couple of millimeters or something like that, the column of air it's sat on and the ground effect from it isn't going to affect the helicopter anymore. And once you've got used to positioning it to do that, then just, you know, sit that piece of wood, if you like, on, you know, a half a centimetre or a centimetre of things, and just gradually build up, and you'll find that way you get to learn how to land on something a lot easier. Yeah, I'll have to have a go. I'll make a, well, I've got this, the Twitch is keeping a log of the chat, so I'll look back on that, and I'll take a look at Chatty. Now gouges are a little bit harder to control. Their shape means they want to follow the grain of the wood a lot more. See, driving it with my fingers. If I'm driving it with my fingers, and no, I'm not going to go shooting off. Okay, and I've now got chips all over the floor, so I've got a lot of cleaning up to do after the stream tonight. So I'm going to try and do it in this direction. And those of you who like the sound of cutting wood, enjoy. Well, I guess one of the other tips for carving, don't try and take too much off in one go. Take your time. It's a lot safer and a lot less likely to cause damage to your piece. Yes, no. Yes, no. How's that for a contradiction in terms? Yeah, you do go through batteries a lot. The little quadcopters can't really carry much, and especially you've kind of got a contradiction. There's smaller quadcopters are actually heavier weight for weight, or power for weight, than the bigger versions. So your power to weight ratio is a lot worse on the little quadcopters than the bigger ones. So unfortunately you're stuck with the problem of that. Your only way really around it is to just get more batteries. And then it really depends on just how those batteries are charged, whether they're fast charged or capable of being fast charged or not. But there again, you know, especially if you're new to flying helicopters or even quadcopters, 5 minutes is an awfully long time sometimes. And when I fly the big quad that I've got, and did I say I'd show you the big quad just, Jessup, or was it somebody else? Then that well, it'll easily fly for 20 minutes on the battery pack I put in it, and that certainly, you know, at the end of 20 minutes it's kind of tiring. You kind of I start looking down at the time and go, I must have been going for an hour. And I know I haven't, but it's still a lot of hard work. Yes, you can do. That's okay. You can link that video or the quadcopter. Was it you I said I'd show the big one to Just Jessup? And if it was, I'll go get it. If it wasn't, then I won't bother. But unless you unless you really want to see the big one. I say big. It's bigger. It's still small, but it's bigger than the one I was building on stream. That's tearing the wood. Yes, please, Eddie. That would be good. Have a look at the red 5. Yeah. They've got the power to weight ratio on the little things like that is I hesitate to say poor. That's the wrong word to describe it. But you know, if you didn't have lithium polymer batteries, the thing just wouldn't fly. NiCads or nickel metal hydride, generally speaking, just does not have the power density to fly those small things. They can be great fun, but they are highly unstable things to fly, relatively speaking. No thank you, Red 5. I do not want to have 10% off. Yeah, that was a medium-sized one. Oh, they're pretty. The bag charms with the captured beads. They look really nice. The gold one especially has got that lovely lovely colouring to it. Oh, and that's just a direct picture. Okay. They look really good. Yeah, they both worked. Yeah. Yeah. Deadbread TV, welcome back to the studio this evening. That's nice of you to drop in. Thank you very much. Okay. I may drop you an email a bit later on, Adi Fall Guy. In fact, I'm very likely to drop you a Twitch email, or possibly even a real email a little bit later on. I have a thought. But in the meantime, I shall go back to this for a little bit. So, Dead TV, how are you today? I don't recall knowing where in the world you are. So, if you're in the UK, or we in the UK have a bank holiday this weekend, i.e., we've got Monday off work. So, I don't know if that's similar where you are. What are you up to? Anything interesting this weekend? Of course, that's just a polite inquiry. If you don't wish to tell me, that's quite alright as well. Because, of course, telling me does tell however many other people are also watching the stream. Oh, Manchester. Okay, just across the... yeah. just across the Pennines from Yorkshire. Yeah. Been to Manchester, well, I'm going to say I've been to Manchester. It's big places, Manchester. Quite a few times. Quite often worked in the city. And of course there's the airport there, which I have been to many times. So, okay. Don't actually know the districts that well, so yeah, AD, that's kind of I didn't know whether you wanted to say that on stream or anything, but that's kind of the gist. Duchess of Cambridge, yeah. Born at about 8:30 this morning, I think. She went into labour about 6:30. Well, not the Duchess. Sorry, the Duchess did, but not the Princess. They came out of the hospital about 6:30 this evening, I think. And then went home. Unless, of course, you mean something else entirely. So the country has a new princess. Thanks, Eddie. Do I sell my PCs or keep them? Yes. I have never sold any yet. I've never tried to sell any yet. Dead Bread TV. I have no objection to selling pieces. Personal pieces, for example, like the two pussycats here. Then they're personal pieces. They're staying with me. In fact, these are from my wife because there are pussycats. But sort of general pieces, anything else that I do which isn't a personal thing, then yeah, I'm quite happy to sell it. I mean, it's a daft thing, you know. Wood, for example, doesn't grow on trees. It's quite expensive stuff, relatively speaking, anyway. And you know, chisels and stuff like that. So yes, if anybody is interested in buying pieces, just let me know if you see something. Of course, it is always possible to ask for a commission as well, but please bear in mind that there is quite a lot of work goes into things that look quite simple. So it's not, you know, it's not going to be something like a price of £2.50 or something like that, you know. It's there is quite a bit of work goes into pieces. Yeah, the baby. Yep, there's been, I guess there was kind of an aerial shot which is probably now gone all over the world. Yeah, somebody there, I think, had a camera boom, so they were looking quite closely down at it. And there's going to be next to nothing on the news for the next few days now, apart from baby news. It was quite funny. I was watching Sky News, and effectively the reporters were, shall we say, they were making comments about them being tired, having been up since 6:30 this morning when they got to know. I'm thinking, it's only 6:30 at night. It's not as though you've been there 48 hours. That's a lot higher than it looks in there. Let's take the gouge to it again. Oh, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of talk to the bug about, you know, the baby and baby pictures and all sorts of things. Apparently, the message about it being born actually went out on Twitter first this morning. Do I think you? Ooh, yes and no. I think you don't forget the skill. You just have lost the practice of it, or you lose the practice of it. And I think it's something that you know, if you start practicing again, you'll pick it back up quite a bit. So it really is just a matter of you've sort of, I don't know. I suppose it's a bit like athletes or whatever. You know, that run for miles and miles and miles, and if they take time off, then what they've got to do is they've got to, you know, if they take a month off or two, for example, what they've got to do then is start slowly and build up their muscle tone again until they've got the stamina, etc., to you know, to do the marathon, the 26 miles, or the ultra marathon, or whatever it is that they're doing. And I think, you know, a lot of skills, you know, like carving or drawing, etc., are similar. You don't lose the techniques, you just lose the fine control that you had in doing it. Yeah, I kind of agree with that, Eddie. Yeah. That's what I wanted to do, get that piece out of there. Dear, time is it? Okay. When did I start carving woodwork? About 3 years ago. Carving is about when I started. And I can't actually recall why I started carving. I started the pyrography first, and something, you know, intrigued me enough about carving to want to try it. And unfortunately, well, my wife tried to buy me some chisels, some hand chisels for Christmas. But of course, like any beginner, she bought me them. But unfortunately, shall we say that they weren't as useful as they should have been. And I am still determined to sharpen them. I have spent hours trying to sharpen the chisels. They're basically the ones she bought were blunt, and they have stubbornly remained blunt. But I am determined to sharpen them so that I can actually use them. Because she did buy me them, as a present. But I can't actually recall why I started. But yeah, I've been doing it about 3 years. I haven't done a lot of pieces. I've done probably no more than about half a dozen. And I can't actually show you a great deal because the early pieces that I did are downstairs somewhere. And I don't know where they are. Nothing particularly fantastic on the early pieces. A carved leaf, for example, which is one of the things that came with the kit. I've for a wedding anniversary I did a nice 2 hearts with a ribbon, relief cut, and a waving ribbon around them with some lettering, a phrase burnt into the wood alongside. That the burning was done with a high-speed rotary tool. It spins that fast that if you keep it in one place, it actually burns the wood, rather than pyrography tool. But unfortunately, they're somewhere else. I don't know where they are. The most recent things is this. Yeah, you're looking at it that way. So this was done on stream. This is done in ash, and then the stream persuaded me that it would be a good idea to paint it as well. So it's the first time I've painted a carving. This ash was a pain in the neck to carve, to be honest. The dark wood is really hard, and the light wood isn't much softer. But this has got that ridge feeling on it as well across the and that's even when I was trying really hard, which is why this is a very shallow relief carve on this one, and I didn't clear the whole background. It was just too much work. But when I started this, was the only piece of wood I happened to have around, and I since ordered some basswood, so I'd much rather carve the basswood. So a very shallow relief on that. I am trying to do some 3D carving. So I've got the starter here of a pussycat. Actually, I've been mainly using knives for this rather than chisels. So it's a start. It's roughing out a blank for a pussycat, which is sort of half asleep, shall we say. So his head is turned to one side, and so I've started work on that. And that's a figure carving. So I did a 3D figure carve. Again, this is out of basswood. Not fantastically good, but as a first thing, again, generally using mostly knives, but I have used the chisel a little bit on this. Just starting it, roughing it out. It's sort of working, but I'm getting there. But that's about it for carving. Okay, I shall drop you an email, AD, about how to pay for them. I will take one of each. Okay, Jessup, just Jessup, that's fine. Carving them on a stone. Yes. I have been carving them on a stone. Quite a rough stone as well. Show you this one. I've not actually tried the little ones yet. I've never actually had them out of the packet, but these things here, and I have had these on a stone, quite a coarse stone, and you can see I'm pushing against that. I would not dare do that with my own chisels. That's how blunt it is, and that's probably after okay, I've not gone, there you go, even that's coming off. I've not gone mad, you know, I've not taken half an inch off or anything like that with the stone, but I've done a fair bit. But it was I've got some finer stones now, which I've picked up to try and do something better. But I've tried sharpening a couple of these. I think it was this one, and I think the flat chisel. That one's sort of got an edge there. I wouldn't want to push that one too hard against me, but it's sort of got an edge. It's got a burr on it at the moment, but it's got an edge, and that's taken a little bit. In fact, yeah, I've rounded it off a little bit, so I've got a bit more work to do on that one. But you know, it's been really hard to do it, and the others, you know, something like this V tool is going to be a real pain in the neck to try and sharpen. But they're sold in craft shops of these things, you know, as beginner tools, if you like. You know, I mean, they're a nice shaped tool. They're nice to hold, a nice, quite pleasant shape. But you know, I was going to say I've tried using these on balsa wood. I'd have trouble actually carving balsa wood with my own chisels unless I sharpen them, you know, polish them up again. But there's no way this cuts anything. It won't. I've tried it on pine and all sorts of stuff. These tools, and they just won't cut at all. And it's a pity, because as a beginner, the problem beginners have, of course, is they don't know whether the problem that they're having carving is because they haven't got the skill to do it, or the tools. And unless the tools are blunt, they're going to have real problems. You know, for carving, the sharper the tool, the better. You know, the sharpness is your friend. You know, sharp tools don't make them more dangerous; they actually make them less dangerous to use. Ah dear. Now that I've taken them out of where they were sat, nothing's going to go back, so I'll tidy that up later. Oh, I've got something else I carved, but this was done using rotary tools. That was off a chunk of firewood. Again, that was lots of firsts. That's the first thing I've carved using rotary tools. So okay, so yeah, so yes, I'm gonna keep trying, Eddie. I really want to be able to use them to carve at least one thing. I possibly won't ever use them again, but I really want to be able to carve at least one thing as there was a present from my wife. Amy Tuff, good evening, welcome to the stream, although I gather you can't actually hear me say that, but sound as far as I know is going out. Thank you, Electroplasm. Welcome back to the studio this evening. Yep, okay, we'll do AD Folga. I'll do it after the stream probably, and you know, you respond whenever you're available. You don't have to stay up or anything, and I'll do that. We're getting closer, Ectoplasm. We're getting closer. A lot of this area around here is close enough to start to get the big chisel onto. Certainly this edge here, and working around here now is close enough to the depth that I want to get the big chisel out. and flatten it off. This couple of areas around here need some more work definitely, but you know what, I'm being lazy. What I should do at this point is move the carving around rather than trying to work around the clamp. G-clamps are a bit of an awkward thing to do this with. I'd be better off with like a hand friction clamp, but I haven't got one. So a G-clamp will do the job. I kind of would like at some point to do some 3D carving. Now things like the two pieces that I showed earlier, I've done those by holding them in my hand. And by the way, if you're carving like that, especially if you're using knives, for anybody that's watching that might be thinking of trying it, highly recommend that you get something like that, which is a Kevlar woven glove. So it's quite soft and flexible, but it's got Kevlar woven into it, so that when you've got a knife that's used for carving, like these things, and they are as sharp, if not sharper, than my chisels are. These things are really sharp, but because you're holding those in your hand, and if you don't hold them properly, and even if you do, it can be very easy to cut yourself. So we're holding a piece with a Kevlar glove on like that, resists the cutting action. It doesn't resist stabbing, but cutting. And of course, when you're using knives, you are using a slicing motion most of the time, so it does resist that. And I've saved myself some pain wearing the glove. So a good thing to get is Kevlar gloves. They can be a little hard to get hold of. Actually, chainmail gloves work as well, but they're a bit heavier and they tend to damage the wood. You can actually often get Kevlar impregnated gloves, but they look more like gardening gloves. They're really heavy duty, sort of plastic or woven material. Getting a hold of something like this is a little bit difficult, but it's worth it. They're a lot more flexible and comfortable to wear. I know those two in the picture look really nice. I mean, if you've got any other interesting colours, let me know. Don't worry, just Jessup. I end up watching things like that for hours on end. Ah dear. Yeah, the knife. Well, I mean, I've never really done it too many times, because you know, if you're holding the knife and you're driving it properly, it's actually quite difficult to cut yourself. I've more had. Well, it's when you start being careless. That's when you stand more chance of damaging yourself. And by careless, I don't mean sort of, you know, just waving a knife around or anything like that. It's just not watching where your fingers are. I'm quite a miser in some ways when it comes to materials. for things like carving and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm wasting a lot of wood. Effectively, over half the wood is going out as shavings, and I kind of, it's a funny sort of thing, you know. I kind of would want to carve something that filled the volume, so I didn't waste as much wood. But just a weird thing with me. So sometimes that can be quite hard. I can find it quite hard to find things to either carve or whatever, you know, if it means like wasting a lot of material. That's one thing actually with doing this on stream. It's kind of like I needed to find an image that I liked to carve fairly quickly, and Ruth here was a good image. But also, I know, for example, the big wide open areas are easier and quicker to carve than little fiddly things like this, which of course if I filled the volume I'd have lots of fiddly things. So it's another side effect of streaming is made me has forced me to be less frugal, shall we say. Oh, I can wait for the, well, yeah, I can, if I like the other two, just wait for the clips, Adi. So yeah. Ooh, that's nasty, ectoplasm. That is really nasty. I've only cut myself deeply once. I mean, I've caught myself on the edge of these chisels when they're in the pack. I've been putting them away. I've caught myself on the edge of these chisels. I don't think I've ever cut myself with a knife at all with those knives. But I did cut myself a couple of times a long time ago. One with a penknife, and I was cutting the end of a hose, and the penknife wasn't that sharp, so I was using too much force, and I cut myself across my knuckle here. I've still got the scar. It's a light scar, but I've still got the scar, and that was cut down to the bone. I could see the bone, and I didn't have stitches on there. I just put a plaster over it and it's healed. And the second time is I cut myself, and again I don't think I possibly can still see the scar, but I can't recall it now. When I was a young lad, I worked in a supermarket while I was still at school, as a lot of them did at the time, stacking shelves. And we used what is effectively a Stanley knife, for want of a better description. It's a box cutter and a blade holder, which basically just held a razor blade. Well, it's a bit thicker as a Stanley blade, but it's effectively a razor blade, which we used to open the boxes. And it was on, and I'd put it down on a shelf, and I just caught it with my elbow, and I sliced my elbow open. And again, that was wasn't very deep, but there was quite a lot of blood everywhere. Again, I didn't have stitches on that, but it does teach you to be somewhat wary of knives. Get yourself some of those gloves, ectoplasm, Kevlar gloves. They're a bit warm to work in, to be honest, but you know, the slicing, I mean, if you stab it yourself, you've got a problem. But I mean, I have worn them when I've been using the chisels, and I've caught the edge of something like this gouge here, and it's caught in the material, so it hasn't, and I've scratched myself because it's sharp. You know, it's got a sharp enough edge, if you like, to actually go into the glove deeper, but it's not actually sliced into and cut into my fingers. I've just sort of pushed the corner against into my finger, and I felt it, you know, like a sting, and I possibly could have drawn a little tiny pinprick of blood, I guess, but I've saved myself even with driving chisels. So definitely working to chainmail. Yeah, trouble with chainmail, it's like the fisherman fish gutting gloves, which are chainmail as well. They're really, as you say, they're heavy and they're awkward, especially the steel ones. They're They're quite flexible, but they're quite awkward. And if you're trying to hold wood, especially soft-ish woods like this, you damage the wood. But those Kevlar gloves, I wonder if I still got the pack from. Let me just see if I still got the pack. Yeah, I do. Has the pack got a label on it? So that's I found them quite hard to do. That's the one. These probably came from UK Amazon, and that picture's left to right, which means you can't read a thing about what it's saying. So just bear with me a second. Let me flip the. There we go. So I tend to only need one at a time. So I've got two. So I've got a spare. But that's where these were. But they are specifically Kevlar rather than just a cut. You know, some of the cut resistant gloves are just like the way that they're woven, and they're meant for things like kitchen use. And they're not exactly meant to stop a knife cut or something like that. They're meant to more or less jam up the knife, if you like, and hold it. Whereas those particular ones, as they contain the Kevlar, which is the main resistance against the cutting. Yeah, blood comes out with the slightest prick sometimes. Oh, you may, of course, yes, you do chainmail, don't you, ectoplasm? Yeah. Okay, well, I tend to hold, of course, one hand's always on the handle, so it tends to be quite a long way away from the pointy stuff at the end. Whether it's carving or whether it's using a chisel or whether it's using the blade. Although I guess I do sometimes drive, use the finger drive to drive the thing towards my thumb, and potentially I guess then I've got the danger of doing that. But I tend not to like doing things like that. I'll tend to more drive the piece with my right hand, with my left hand if I can do it. But yeah. I get a bit wary about that. I remember as kids in the supermarket, it used to be quite fun because we're using effectively razor blades, and we just get the knife in your hand, and I'm trying to simulate something. I got the knife in my hand like this, and we just run around a box, but at this sort of speed. And the top's off the box in about 4 seconds flat, and you get everybody saying, worrying about whether you're going to cut yourself because you're moving a blade that fast in your hands. But of course, as you probably know it, ectoplasm, you can't cut. You only cut yourself when the blade moves relative to what it is that you're cutting. So sliding or pushing. If the two are moving together, there's no relative movement, and you basically can't cut yourself. And it's weird. You watch everybody cringing when you do it and backing off and expecting blood at any moment. It was quite good fun. It looks like you have another customer. Which means I better make sure I get my reply in really quickly, haven't I, AD? Yep, and if you, as I say, if you've got any other nice colours, I'd be really interested. Quite happy to wait until you get the clasps, but yes, I will send you an email or a Twitch email. They will be a present for. They'll be a present for somebody who I hope isn't listening at the moment. I haven't seen the link, AD. I seem to have missed that one. Oh, sorry. Yes, you did, didn't you? Sorry, it's further back. Oh, I wondered if there would be a blue one. Blue's the blue. Yeah. Can I have all four, please? I love the blue colours as well, but I know my wife likes. They're lovely. They are, yeah, they're lovely. Please, I'll quite happily wait for the. Well, yeah, you can send me the two and wait if the other two are. If the other two, or if the other two are going to take less than about a week, I need them within about a week. AD for at least two of them. But otherwise, yeah, if you can send me two, the two, and I'll take the other two, or whenever you get them. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I like this sort of shopping. They come to you. Yes, they're beautiful. I like those a lot. So there you go, folks. You've now also seen examples of Adie's work and just how how talented he is at doing these things. Ah dear. Just thinking then I'm getting a bit tired because I'm forcing this a bit, and I'm just watching myself driving that and seeing the blade shooting, you know, like that, if you like. I'm doing it wrong. I'm getting tired, obviously. That's the wrong way to drive a chisel because of the jerking motion. Whilst it will continue when you come out of the wood, it basically shouldn't come out that suddenly that you jerk the whole chisel forward an inch or two. It basically means you're taking too much wood out or applying too much pressure. So either the tool is blunt or you've just tried to take too big a chunk. Ruth, good evening, good afternoon, welcome to the studio. It is really. I enjoy particularly the sound. When you're cutting wood, it's got the sort of sound it makes is lovely sort of sound. I find it quite therapeutic. Especially when you're getting rid of wood, you know, the waste wood like this, so you're not that bothered about how neat it looks. I've often thought about taking a chunk of wood like this and just literally just, you know, not worrying about a design, just turning it all into chips, just for the sound and the nice chunks that you can take out with something like a gouge. Midna Star. Good. Midna. That's Midna. That's from... It's from a game, isn't it? And I'm now desperately trying to remember the game. Oh, because I've played it and I can't remember. But good evening, welcome to the studio. Unfortunately, there isn't actually a lot of smell to this, certainly to this wood when you're cutting it. You tend to get more of a smell with the pyrography because you're heating the wood up and you get a nice warm wood smell. Zelda, thank you. Twilight Princess, yeah, that's the one. That's the game I've played. Zelda, yeah, Zelda. I kept thinking of Link rather than Zelda. Is it Link? Oh, I'm totally confused now, but Zelda's the one I was thinking of. I enjoyed playing that game, I just haven't finished it. You only tend to get it when it's just been freshly cut though, and I suppose I am cutting it here, but it's not generating much smell. Or when it's warmed, it also gives off a nice smell. Oh dear. Lol indeed, ectoplasm. That's a bit like selling your block of wood free, you know, the expressions of a frustrated artist. Oh dear, yes. Made from the finest European lime wood mixed with American basswood. For extra curly results. Of course, all the curves means that the kindling contains a lot of air, making it easier to burn. Packrat68, thank you very much for following the studio. That's most kind of you. Welcome, as I say, to the studio. Yeah, glad you're enjoying the content and the somewhat interesting jokes that occasionally come up. It's a pity we don't actually generate too many of these things, otherwise it possibly would be a good way of getting rid of them. I don't know anybody with a hamster or a guinea pig, so been a little bit wary around this area here because I've not cut it out yet, because I'm fairly certain if I did I'd probably end up snapping the whole of the tail off. So I'm going to probably leave this as long as absolutely possible before I trim it to actual width, and I also highly suspect that I'm going to make the tail thicker than it should be, because otherwise it will knock off very easily as well. And thank you for the joke, 3D. I've enjoyed that. Oh, I didn't notice the host free. Sorry. Thank you for doing the host. And talking of hosting, which means you're streaming, or a streamer, anybody who's watching isn't familiar with 3D Bloke. I know a lot of you have, and you turn up in his streams, but 3D Bloke, who's just been making an excellent I hesitate to say joke, because knowing Free, it was probably a half serious suggestion. He's an excellent airbrush and paintbrush artist who is a professional, but by no means expert, I would say, or he would say. I might disagree with him, but he is certainly very good at what he does. I highly recommend you check him out. He's currently been doing some work in black and white, monochrome, so white on black, which is absolutely amazing. Some really high quality stuff there. And I believe he's going to go into the Lion's Den next week and actually stream some airbrushing related to gaming, in a game channel even. All the heresies of it. Okay, thank you very much for doing that, AD. That's most kind of you. I shall, as I say, definitely as soon as the stream finishes, I will message you, and then whenever you're ready, just drop the invoice, and I shall pay that quite happily. Oh, TK Art Norway, thank you for joining the studio. That's absolutely amazing. I can't believe somebody with your talent actually wants to follow me. I really can't believe that. Thank you. If anybody, and I don't think there is anybody, but if there's anybody in the stream that doesn't know of TK Art Norway, go check him out. The art that guy does is absolutely amazing. It is as close to photorealistic as I've seen in a long time. It really is. That's absolutely amazing work. In fact, I think there's only a couple of people that I've ever seen do work that close to being photorealistic. 2 or 3 people, shall I say? Not many at all. One whose name escapes me. 3 will know of Marissa, who does photorealistic using airbrushes, and there's another guy that I can't remember the name of that does airbrush work, and his stuff is, even when I've seen him do it, I still don't believe it's not a photograph. If you want to say that, go ahead, TK. You know, I'm not going to argue with the self-assessment. I just wish I was even 1/10 as good. I mean, even 1/20th, it still would be absolutely much better than I am. Although my wife did get me some for Christmas. She got me some pencils. Just trying to think what they were. Not you know, just some. Oh, there we go. Some water. So no, they're watercolor paints. She got me some watercolor pencils, I think. Not necessarily the best brand going, but a nice thing just to try out and play. Now they're paints. Yeah, she even bought me some hairy sticks. Actually, I've got some graded pencils as well, but I tend to only use 1 or 2 grades. I don't tend to use graded pencils, but I'm just looking at what's in here now. Yeah, watercolour pencils. So 12 water. Yeah, no. Nice thing to have a play, because I've never done anything before. Charcoal pencils as well, so I can have a play with charcoal. And some metallic coloured pencils. So I'm going to have some fun at some point. Nothing like what TK does at all, but at least I'll be able to actually see it. And yeah, I know, but you know, some hairy sticks. At least I know enough about those to know that, you know, the difference between the tools and the fact that it's me that's actually you're going to be trying to drive the thing. So most of the bad work will be from me, not from the tools. Yeah, Drew. Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't thinking of Drew. I'm trying to think who it was. And I know the stuff he does. It takes him literally weeks to do with an airbrush, and it's whilst he's sketched it out in pencil first, but the work is, you know, I've seen you know, shot picture after picture, and I've seen a couple of bits of video, I think, and it is, you know, as I say, it looks like a photo. I mean, it you know how sometimes they'll do a Photoshop of like a photograph and then half of it's pencil. well, that's kind of what I've seen that done, and because I've seen it done, I know you can do it. But I know this bloke has actually done it the other way. He's taken the pencil and he's added the colour and with an airbrush, and it's absolutely amazing. Yeah, but yeah, TK, the stuff TK Art does is. Yep, I shall look forward to seeing you stream Ectoplasm, see some of the stuff that you do. I was just thinking there, I've got half of an urge to wonder what would actually impress TK Art of mine. That I could sort of go, hey, have a look at this, and I actually can't think of anything that would impress you. About the nearest thing I've got in terms of artwork as opposed to carving is either the pyrography or one of the scraper board that I've done. I've got a portrait. And neither of them are really in your class of work, but let me get rid of the light off of the top of this. But that was done as just pure white on black scraper board. So, and Midna Star, thank you very much for following the studio. That's very kind of you. I know I've already said welcome, but again, welcome to the studio. So they're nothing like in the same league as TK, but I hope they're quite pretty. That's taken a while then. I think I'm using Twitch alerts. I think it was a little bit. It was a little bit slow. Is that a drink for me? Oh, okay. Yeah, it is. Okay. Okay. Yes, I've just been reminded that it's now actually 20 past 11 in the UK, and it's time I stopped for this evening. It's actually time I had a nice cold drink as well, because my wife's just come in with one for herself, which is now tempting me. So I'm gonna have to go get myself a glass of iced drink. But sorry, I'm going to duck out on you, TK. So having just joined the stream, but what I want to do is say thank you to everybody who's been watching me this evening and joining in and lurking. It's been quite fantastic having you guys around. The usual advert comes now, which is of course if there is anybody that's watching who would like to be notified when I go live again, then please press the follow button, and hopefully Twitch will let you know when I go live. Or alternatively, you can also follow me on Twitter, as a tweet goes out when I go live, but that's about the only tweets that do go out, so you're not going to get inundated. Now, normally I'll stream roughly 7 nights a week at the moment, but I'll see how that goes. I generally start streaming from around about 8 o'clock in the UK, that's 8 PM, 1900 hours GMT. Or as it stands, looking at the clock now, that would have been about 3.5 hours ago. So yeah, roughly 3.25 hours ago. So if you'd like to just drop in anyway, that's roughly when you'll find me around. And Soul Crew 06, not quite sure what you're intending to say there. but otherwise, welcome to the studio. So sorry guys that I'm ducking out at this point, but it's been a long night and I've got to clear up. So hopefully I'll see you again tomorrow. I may or may not be on tomorrow afternoon. We will just see how things go. If I am, I will be doing some punchcraft. If not, it will be continuing this carving tomorrow evening. In the meantime, all of you, as I'm in the UK, I shall wish you all a good evening and I'll hope to see you again.